It was supposed to be the most beautiful morning of her life. The air smelled of lilacs and rain, and the Whitechapel shimmered under a bruised sky. Lily stood before the mirror, her veil trembling like a secret on the edge of a sigh. Behind her, laughter echoed, bridesmaids whispering about the groom's nervous smile. But the sound faded as time began to stretch. The clock ticked louder. A chill moved through the room. When the doors finally opened, it wasn't Ethan's face she saw, but her mother's pale one, and the silence that followed became an ocean she could never escape. The wedding guests murmured, phones flickering like anxious stars. The priest lowered his gaze. Ethan was gone. No call, no note, no trace. In that instant, the petals fell from her bouquet, scattering across the floor like pieces of a life that had just slipped out of existence. Night fell before anyone spoke again. The guests had gone, leaving wet footprints and wilted flowers behind. Lily sat in the empty chapel, still wearing her gown, the veil heavy with rain. She didn't cry, not yet. Her thoughts circled like ravens. Accident, betrayal, kidnapping, death. Every possibility felt too wild to believe and too real to ignore. The ring on her finger felt colder than metal should. When her mother placed a shawl around her shoulders, Lily finally whispered Ethan's name into the dark. It disappeared into the silence, unanswered. Outside, police lights washed the courtyard in red and blue. Somewhere in the distance, a siren cut through the rain, and she felt her world split in two, before and after. The next morning, Lily stood by the edge of a quiet lake near the cottage she and Ethan had planned to share. Mist hung low, softening the world into watercolor. She had called his name so many times that her voice had become a whisper of itself. The police found his car near the riverbank, door open, engine cold. No footprints, no struggle, nothing missing. It was as if he had simply walked into the mist and dissolved. When the detective handed her his watch, stopped at 11:58, something in her chest cracked. That moment became the last time she allowed herself to believe he was alive. Days turned into weeks. The police gave up their search. Newspapers moved on. Lily returned to her empty apartment, where Ethan's shoes still sat by the door. His coat hung on the rack, smelling faintly of cedar and rain. Every object felt like an echo. A half-remembered word caught in her throat. She opened his notebook, pages filled with sketches of flowers, fragments of ideas, a few torn-out sheets missing. The silence of the room felt alive, whispering his name through the walls. When she finally lay in bed, she dreamt of a man walking into the fog, turning to wave, and never coming back. Months later, Lily stood at the edge of the city bridge, her wedding ring clutched between her fingers. She had replayed that day 1,000 times, each version ending the same. Him vanishing like a shadow swallowed by light. Below her, the river moved with slow certainty, carrying leaves and secrets downstream. She whispered goodbye, not to him, but to the hope that had kept her alive. The ring slipped from her hand, striking the surface once before sinking into darkness. For the first time since the wedding, she turned away, not healed, not free, but ready to live with the unanswered. 5 years passed like seasons folded into one another. The world didn't stop for grief. It simply learned to walk around it. Lily found rhythm in routine. Opening her flower shop at dawn, arranging color into silence, and smiling at strangers who never saw the tiredness behind her eyes. She no longer looked for Ethan in crowds, though sometimes, when wind lifted the scent of rain, her heart still turned as if expecting someone to call her name. Every morning she placed a single white rose in the shop window, not for him anymore, but as a quiet promise to herself that beauty could grow from what was broken. The world had moved on, but memory still lingered in corners she couldn't sweep clean. That afternoon, Lily attended a charity event at the city hospital, donating floral arrangements for patient rooms. The corridors smelled of antiseptic and hope. She greeted nurses, smiled politely, tried not to feel out of place among white walls and sterile light. Yet something about hospitals always stirred her. Maybe because they held both endings and beginnings. As she passed room 412, a flicker of recognition made her stop. Her gaze drifted to the metal nameplate by the bed. Ethan Cole. The nurse confirmed what Lily's eyes refused to believe. There was a man inside, unconscious, unclaimed, listed as a coma patient, brought in after an accident months ago. The name had been entered without identification, a simple administrative placeholder. But when Lily stepped closer to the bed, the breath left her body. The face beneath the bandages was unmistakable. Familiar in its lines, changed in its stillness. Ethan. His hair longer, his skin paler, a faint scar tracing his temple. She reached out, fingers trembling inches above his hand, afraid that touch might break the illusion. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a dream. It was him. Dr. Marin Wells entered quietly, her tone gentle but guarded. She explained the case. A man found near the old train depot after an explosion, suffering head trauma. No ID, no memory. They gave him the name Ethan Cole only weeks ago. Unaware it matched. Someone presumed missing. Lily's questions tumbled out faster than her voice could carry them, but Dr. Wells offered few answers. Sometimes, she said, the body remembers what the mind forgets. Lily turned back to the man in the bed, her thoughts unraveling. If this was really Ethan, why did fate return him now? And what part of him had it taken away? That night, Lily sat outside the hospital beneath a flickering street lamp, the city moving in distant rhythm around her. She replayed every word, every heartbeat, every look. She wanted to run, to scream, to wake from a dream that had turned real again. Yet deep down, she knew this moment had been waiting for her, the universe holding its breath until she found him. As rain began to fall, she looked up at the glowing windows above and whispered his name again. This time, it didn't echo into emptiness. Somewhere behind those walls, Ethan Cole breathed. And that was enough to make her believe again. The next morning, Lily returned before sunrise. The hospital corridors were empty, echoing with the hush of distant machines. She carried a vase of white roses, the same kind that once lined their wedding aisle. Standing by his bed, she whispered words he couldn't hear, stories of the life that had gone on without him. But as she spoke, a strange calm filled her chest. For the first time in years, she wasn't speaking to a memory. She was speaking to the man himself. A soft beep interrupted her words. His fingers twitched, his eyelids fluttered. Lily froze, her breath caught in her throat. The doctor had said it could happen at any time. Still, nothing could have prepared her for the moment Ethan's eyes opened. When he spoke, his voice was soft, distant, carrying no trace of recognition. "Where am I?" he asked. Lily's heart leapt, but his eyes held none of the warmth she remembered. He didn't know her. Not her name, not their life, not the promise they once made beneath falling rain. Dr. Wells entered, her face careful and composed, explaining the diagnosis: retrograde amnesia. He may remember in fragments, she said, or not at all. Lily nodded numbly, her eyes fixed on the man who had once known every corner of her soul. The silence between them felt deeper than any grave. Lily visited every day after that. She read to him poetry, old letters, fragments of their story, hoping something familiar might spark within his silence. Sometimes, she caught him watching her with quiet curiosity, as if trying to remember a dream that refused to return. Once, he smiled faintly, and said her voice made him feel safe, though he couldn't explain why. She carried that word with her, the smallest seed of hope. Each evening she left the room whispering good night, knowing he would not say her name, yet believing one day he might. Weeks passed. Each day Ethan grew stronger, walking short distances, speaking in longer sentences, but never remembering her. The doctors called it progress. To Lily, it felt like standing at the edge of a memory, she could see but never reach. One afternoon, as she adjusted the flowers on his nightstand, he asked, "Were we close?" She wanted to tell him everything. The laughter, the plans, the vows that never came true. But instead she smiled softly and said, "Yes, once." The words trembled between them, a bridge built of ache and quiet truth. That night, Lily dreamed of the wedding again. The rain, the bouquet, the empty aisle. But this time, when she turned, Ethan stood waiting, smiling, his eyes clear and whole. She woke with tears on her cheeks and an ache in her chest. The dream lingered all morning, urging her back to the hospital. When she arrived, Dr. Wells met her at the door. "He had a visitor," she said quietly, "a man who claimed to know him." Lily's pulse quickened. No one else should have known he was here. As she stepped into the room, she saw Ethan staring out the window, distant. "Who was he?" she asked. Ethan turned slowly and answered. He said his name was Thomas. Thomas arrived the next day, with the unease of a man walking into his own confession. His face carried the weight of years, his voice careful, rehearsed. Lily waited in the hallway, watching through the glass as Thomas spoke to Ethan. The man he had once called brother. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw Ethan's confusion twist into anger, then fade into emptiness. When Thomas stepped out, his eyes avoided hers. "He doesn't remember anything," he said. "Maybe that's for the best." But Lily knew the look of a man hiding something. And in that moment, she realized Ethan's disappearance hadn't been an accident. Someone had wanted him gone. Later, over coffee in the hospital cafe, Lily pressed Thomas for answers. He spoke in fragments. The stress, the debts, the failed business Ethan had tried to shield her from. His hands shook as he stirred his cup, eyes darting toward the floor. There had been threats, he said. Contracts gone wrong. People who wanted Ethan silenced. "He wanted to protect you," Thomas whispered. "So he ran." The words settled between them like ash. Lily wanted to scream, to hate him for hiding the truth. But the ache inside her had no shape anymore. Only a question remained. What had Ethan done that was worth disappearing for? That evening, Lily visited Ethan again, her heart torn between love and doubt. She told him pieces of the truth Thomas had confessed, watching his expression shift like clouds breaking across a sky. He listened quietly, brow furrowed, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I don't remember any of it," he said, voice trembling. "But it feels like something I do to protect you." Tears gathered in Lily's eyes. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that love had been his reason for vanishing. But as his hand found hers, she felt a pulse of unease. Sometimes, love wasn't protection. Sometimes it was the reason people disappeared. Sophia Hart appeared like a ripple in still water. The young journalist had been following a story about a biotech company linked to missing persons, and Ethan's name had surfaced. She found Lily after hours, waiting outside the hospital, her notepad clutched tightly. "He wasn't just a businessman," she said. "He was a whistleblower." The words hit Lily like lightning. Ethan had been preparing to expose something dangerous enough to erase him. As Sophia handed over a faded photograph of Ethan with men in lab coats and security badges, Lily realized the truth was no longer buried. It was waiting to be unearthed. Unearthed. That night, Lily spread the photograph and documents across her kitchen table, candlelight flickering over the papers. Ethan's face stared up from the images, not in a suit, but in a lab coat, standing beside machines she didn't recognize. The company's name printed in the corner, Unveiled Industries. Every fiber in her body screamed for answers. The man in the hospital bed wasn't just her lost love. He was part of something vast, something built on silence. As the clock struck midnight, Lily made a decision. Tomorrow, She would confront Dr. Marin Wells and demand to know what she'd been hiding all along. Dr. Marin Wells didn't seem surprised when Lily appeared at her office door. The room was lined with files and the faint scent of antiseptic, her expression steady behind rimless glasses. "You've been asking the right questions," she said. The walls felt too quiet as the doctor spoke. "About an experimental project called Unveiled, designed to store fragments of consciousness, to rebuild memory after trauma. Ethan had volunteered," she said, "to test its limits. But something went wrong. He discovered unethical trials, and before he could expose them, he vanished." Lily listened in stunned silence, realizing his disappearance had not been abandonment. It had been sacrifice. Yet one question still burned inside her. If this man lying in the hospital bed was rebuilt from what was left of Ethan, who exactly had she fallen in love with again? That night, Lily walked the hospital corridors, as if tracing the edges of a dream she was afraid to wake from. The weight of the truth pressed against her ribs. Ethan had become both victim and survivor of his own choices. When she entered his room, he looked at her with strange recognition. Eyes unfocused but reaching. "I saw something," he murmured. "A field. Flowers. And you." She froze. "A memory?" He nodded slowly, as though afraid it might vanish if he moved too quickly. Tears welled in her eyes. For years she'd prayed to hear her name and his voice again. And now, trembling, he whispered it. "Lily." Memories began to return in fragments, each one sharper than the last. He remembered the night he ran, the message he never sent, the men who followed him, the crash that erased his past. Lily listened as he spoke, piecing together the mosaic of a life stolen by fear. But as he remembered more, she saw something darker flicker behind his eyes. Guilt. He confessed he had known about Neuroveil's human trials long before he vanished, that he'd been part of the project's creation. "I helped build the thing that almost destroyed me," he said. His voice cracked like breaking glass. For a long time, neither spoke. Love, Lily realized, could survive truth, but it could never escape it. Lily left the hospital that night unable to breathe. The truth clawed at her chest. Ethan hadn't been a victim of fate. He had been part of it. Every moment she had grieved was tangled in the very experiment that had given him back to her. Standing under the same bridge where she had thrown her wedding ring years ago, she stared at her reflection in the dark water. The city hummed above, indifferent. "Why bring him back?" she whispered. "If he isn't the same." The wind answered in soft ripples, scattering her reflection like shattered glass. Love, she realized, could resurrect the body, but not the man who once held her heart. When Lily returned to the hospital, Ethan was waiting. He looked stronger now, sitting upright with a clarity in his eyes she hadn't seen since before the wedding. "I remember everything," he said quietly, "but I'm not the man you loved. That man died the night I chose to disappear." His voice broke, trembling with remorse. Lily stepped closer, tears tracing quiet paths down her cheeks. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I still see him in you." Their hands met, not in reunion, but in recognition. The truth no longer separated them. It simply made them human again. Outside, dawn began to rise, pale light spilling through the blinds, washing the room in forgiveness. The morning after Ethan's confession, the hospital felt colder. The nurses whispered as Lily walked through the halls, sensing something was shifting beneath the calm. "Doctor." Wells called her into her office, the blinds half closed against a gray sky. "He shouldn't remember this much," she said, her voice tense. The treatment wasn't designed for full recall. Lily's heart sank. "What happens now?" she asked. Dr. Wells hesitated. If the memories continued to flood back, his system might not hold. It wasn't just physical recovery. We rebuilt him from what was left. The words echoed, strange and terrifying. For the first time, Lily understood. Ethan's survival might be killing him all over again. Lily rushed to Ethan's room, heart pounding. He was standing by the window, hands gripping the sill, watching the city blur beneath the rain. "They used me," he said before she could speak. His voice trembled, raw with memory. "I thought I could stop them, but I helped them start." He told her everything, how he discovered Unveil's human trials, how he'd leaked the files, how Thomas had begged him to run. The explosion that nearly killed him wasn't random. It was the price of betrayal. As he spoke, tears slid down his cheeks, not from pain, but from the unbearable clarity of remembering. Lily took a step forward, her voice breaking. "You didn't deserve to die for it." He looked at her and whispered, "Maybe I did." Later that day, Thomas returned, this time with fear in his eyes. He'd received a call, a warning. Someone from Unveiled knew Ethan was alive. "They'll come for him," he said, voice low. Lily felt the air drain from the room. She looked at Ethan, who seemed oddly calm. "Maybe that's how it has to end," he murmured. But Lily refused to accept another disappearance, another grave without a body. "You fought to come back," she said. "Don't surrender now." For a long moment he just watched her. The woman who had lost everything to his silence and still stood beside him. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Night fell, and the hospital grew still. Lily sat beside Ethan, their hands entwined, listening to the soft rhythm of machines. "If they come," she whispered, "I'll tell them the truth. All of it." Ethan turned his head, his expression softening. "You'd risk everything for me." "You already did," she said. He smiled faintly. And for a heartbeat they were no longer haunted lovers, but two people at the end of a long war, sharing the quiet before dawn. Outside, the storm raged louder, thunder rolling over the city like an old promise being broken again. Just before dawn, alarms pierced the silence. Security lights flashed down the corridor, voices shouting orders. Lily was pulled from her chair as men in black uniforms stormed the room. "We have to take him," one said. She fought, screaming his name, but Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Lily, stop." Their eyes met, his filled with calm resolve, hers with terror. "If they take me, the truth survives," he said. "If I run, it dies." The guards dragged him toward the door. Lily tried to follow, but Dr. Wells appeared, gripping her shoulders. "Let him go," she whispered. "He's doing what he was meant to do." As the doors slammed shut, the sound echoed through her chest like a heartbeat, breaking in two. Days passed in silence after Ethan was taken. The hospital released no statement. The staff spoke in coded sentences, and Dr. Wells vanished from her office. Lily wandered through the empty corridors like a ghost haunting someone else's story. She no longer cried. The tears had gone where words could not reach. Yet every morning she left a single white rose on the bench outside room 412. The place where love had begun again and ended once more. Then one morning, as she placed the rose, she found an envelope taped beneath the bench, her name written in Ethan's hand. Inside was a single line: "If you ever wonder whether I loved you, know that I still do. In every version of me." Weeks later, Sophia Hart reached out with news. A whistleblower file had surfaced, exposing Unveil's experiments to the world. Ethan's recordings were among them. His voice filled Lily's small apartment that night, calm, measured, resolute. "If these words find their way beyond me," he said in the recording, "then truth has lived longer than fear." His final words came like a benediction. "Tell Lily I remembered her first." The sound of his voice broke her open and healed her all at once. It was not the reunion she had dreamed of, but it was enough to know that his love had survived, even when he could not. Spring arrived, bringing color back to a world that had forgotten how to bloom. Lily reopened her flower shop, her movements quieter, steadier. The shelves filled with peonies and tulips, bursts of life returning to every corner. Customers came and went, unaware that each arrangement carried a silent promise that beauty could survive truth. Sometimes, when the doorbell chimed, she still looked up, expecting to see Ethan, and though he never came, she smiled anyway. Love, she had learned, was not measured by presence, but by endurance. Months later, Lily visited the lake where they had once searched for answers. The air was quiet, the water still. She sat on the same wooden pier where time had stopped 5 years ago. In her hand, she held another letter, one she had written this time. She read it aloud, voice steady and full. You once disappeared into silence. Now I live in it and is not empty anymore. Why, it's filled with you. She folded the note, placed it on the water, and watched it drift away. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was letting go. She was setting something free. 1 year later, Lily returned to the hospital gardens to deliver flowers, her last order of the day. The air smelled of earth and rain. As she arranged the bouquet near the fountain, a man approached, tall, unfamiliar. His voice carried something hauntingly known. These are beautiful, he said. She turned, and though the face was different, the eyes stopped her breath. Do I know you? He asked gently. Lily smiled, her heart steady. In another life, maybe. They stood for a moment in quiet recognition, strangers bound by echoes of what once was. When he walked away, she looked toward the horizon and whispered, "Welcome back."